Welcome back, folks. So I know that on a lot of these shows, some of the information that I bring to you may be deemed as somewhat negative. But I can only hope that people out there understand the importance of knowing what the problems we face actually are. Because you see this stuff happening in the world around you, and you see how easy it would be to change this whole system. And ultimately, one comes to the conclusion that, well, the only reason all these problems exist is because people don't know they exist. People don't realize who and what they are, and they simply allow the world to be trashed around them. And what is one supposed to do when they can see the situation that humanity's facing? I mean, all I can really do, folks, is attempt to alert people to the urgency of this situation, because we still have time to fix it. And you notice the worse it gets, the more totalitarian the system becomes, the more trashed our environment becomes, the more expensive everything becomes, and the harder it becomes to live a normal life in everyday society. So the worse it gets, they make sure that people have to work harder and harder and harder. And the people work so hard that when they get a moment of recreation, they just go out and waste themselves and write themselves off, so they never really look at what's going on. They're just glad for the short time they have to escape the system and to escape the rigours of work, and they just want to enjoy it as much as they can. And so they do. They just go out and they party and they get wasted and they immerse themselves in whichever type of meaningless leisure activity they can find, just anything to get them away from the rigours of their normal everyday life. But they never step back a little bit and realise that this has all been created this way. As I've said before, mankind itself is living in what is essentially a very low security open air prison, within which everybody must work and pay to be alive, and then every now and then you're given time in the exercise yard and a few trinkets to play with, a few fast cars, some nightclubs or some alcohol or a ride on a sailboat. Just something to keep you thinking that you're free. But when you step away from it all and you actually look at society and look at the direction society is heading in, and you see the danger that the human race is in, due to the fact that they are completely oblivious to what's going on around them because they are living within this well-constructed system of work and leisure, then one simply doesn't have a choice but to speak out and to help change the direction in which the ship of state is sailing. And I don't really know how else to bring it all to you, folks. I've gone through so many shows. I've spoken about light, I've spoken about energy, photon light, photon sound. I've explained how reality works, the nature of atoms, the nature of consciousness, how you're simply downloading a frequency. I've talked about the power of emotion. I've attempted to provide for people the tools that I myself have used to overcome the fear that people seem to have for reality. And that's all I can do, folks, is tell you how I've gone about it. I can offer you my perspective. I'm not asking you to follow me or go along with anything I say. I'm simply offering you my perspective of how I have dealt with reality, how I view reality, how I've managed to remove this fear energy from myself, and how I've changed my reality by removing that fear energy, by realizing that my purpose in life is to improve reality by my presence in it. My purpose in life is to do no harm. My purpose in life is to help those around me and to gain a real perspective of what it means to be alive, of what it means to be part of this collective consciousness and part of this reality. And I've learned how to forgive. I can still hold anger. I can still sit here and call someone a sociopath or a psychopath and absolutely love them and feel ultimate sadness for them at exactly the same time. I can call people these things simply based on an observation of their actions, but I don't wish to hurt them. I don't wish them to come to any harm whatsoever. I simply want them to come home, because it's time for us all to come home. It's time for the human race to finally evolve within its own consciousness. And all mankind has to do is to simply stop and take stock, step back and look at reality for what it is. Look at themselves for what they are, and look at the people around them for what they are. And it doesn't matter what anybody did. Let it go, because they are you. They only did what they did because that is what this system trained them to do. And the key to it all is forgiveness. Everybody surrender right now. It doesn't matter what side you're on. Everybody surrender. If the police surrender, if the government surrenders, if China surrenders and America surrenders and Australia surrenders and everybody just surrenders, and then you surrender and your neighbours surrender and every person within every nation simply surrenders, then who is there to fight? Where is the war? Where is the starvation? Where's the poverty? Where's the homelessness? Where is all of the destruction that has been wrought? All of it simply disappears. We've got a beautiful reality, folks, and we've got a wonderful opportunity to make it even more beautiful, to make it into something absolutely spectacular. We have the opportunity to make the world into anything we want to make it into. And yet, because we hold this fear in our hearts and this loathing towards our neighbours and towards ourselves, we're simply making it into a mine. We're making it into a toxic wasteland. Because all of the industries that are damaging the planet so much only exist because of this fear. Because if we weren't in fear of being who and what we are, and in fear of standing up for ourselves, and in fear of the system itself, we wouldn't be working in these industries, because we wouldn't be in the state of shortage that this system keeps us in. It's only our fear of the system, our fear of standing up against the system, that perpetuates this shortage, because we can change it any time we want. Because everything that's in place that controls mankind was all put in place by mankind. It's all just mankind. And what keeps us in place and what keeps this whole system running the way it does is our belief that the system is real, when ultimately it's just an idea. I've spoken about that so many times, and I know I repeat myself on a lot of the shows, but it's true, folks. It's just an idea. It's just a meme. And it's high time we woke up to this, because it's high time we change things. The question is, when are we going to do it? Because we're kind of beating around the bush, and at the moment mankind is kind of like a train that's heading at full speed into a canyon, and the bridge ahead is broken. And we don't really have a great deal of time to put the brakes on. If we don't put the brakes on, if we go careering off the end, well, so be it. That's just the way it is. But it would seem that all we have to do is show a little self-responsibility. Stop competing with each other. Stop attacking each other. Stop blaming other people for the situation the world is in. And just stop and change it. And you might think, well, that's all very well for you to say, but it's very hard to do. And yeah, sure, it probably is, because there's so many people that simply don't think that way. But the reality is, folks, is that that's all it would take, and in most cases people think it's hard simply because they're not prepared to do it. As I said on last week's show, people should simply occupy themselves. They don't need to go out and protest. They don't need to go out and fight this system. They need to stop using the system. They need to stop depending on the system for their lives, and they need to start helping those around them. There's no point going and marching in Wall Street. There's no point going and screaming outside Parliament House or Government House or Capitol Hill or anywhere. All you have to do is get to know your neighbours and build community where you live. Understand that the people around you are just like yourself in Lakesh. And learn how to forgive them. Learn how not to judge them. Because by judging other people, ultimately you're simply judging yourself. And sure, folks, look, I can appreciate that it isn't really that easy because there are a lot of dysfunctional people out there. All the sociopaths that run our political systems and our media are a very good example of this. But again, you've got to understand that these people are a product of society. And the society itself is a product of our fear, a product of the inner fear that we have collectively yet to overcome. It's like a vicious circle, really, isn't it, when you really get down and look at it? We create a system that's based on fear, and then it's the fear of the system that keeps us in fear. We're definitely very strange creatures. But to me it just seems very obvious, folks. It just seems very simple and very obvious how to rectify the entire situation. And when I see legislation being put in place like that which has just been put in place by the Obama regime, then what would you have me do? I simply have to speak out about it. And I'm sure there are many people who are speaking out about it, but many of them aren't doing it from a state of fear. And sure, there's a lot to be feared from this legislation. It's extremely corrupt, and it is, as I said earlier in the show, virtually a declaration of war against freedom right across the globe. But even in it being that, what I see deeper than that is an opportunity. Because mankind has been given so many chances to wake up, and so many opportunities to stand up for who and what we are, and to come into our power, and to govern ourselves, and to live in compassion, and remove this fear from our lives. And we just never seem to take them. And so it just keeps getting worse. It keeps getting more and more blatant. And it will continue to do so until we decide to step up to the plate. And folks, when I say step up to the plate, I hope you can see that I'm not saying let's have violent revolution. What I'm saying is let's simply embrace each other. Step up to the plate, step away from the fear, and realize that when you deal with other people, you are dealing with yourself, and treat them accordingly. We do this, we turn away from the system by turning towards each other, and once we've done that, the system simply crumbles and falls because it is nothing more than a house of cards, because it's not real. It's just an idea.